I'm Scott McGregor, and this digital extra, Building the Ultimate Canyon Rig, appears in the early summer 2012 edition of Rapid Magazine. Last summer, I dropped in on a guided Green River Gates of Lodore rafting trip. It was my first Canyon River trip, and I was hooked. This Rapid feature is completely self-serving. I wanted to set up Rapid and my family with a killer raft rig, and I figured if I'm this excited about a multi-day canyon trip, and I dream of the Grand Canyon, most of you probably do too. I enlisted the help of Rapid columnist and longtime raft guide Jeff Jackson. After weeks of mail order, we're here on our local river building the ultimate canyon rig. We're going to show you how we put it together and why we ordered what we did.
Rapid Media presents Rapid Media TV.
So when there's two sets of lines, all right, so one line's going to go through here, through here, through here, through here, right, back and forth. And another set of lines is going to go opposite them, and they're going to snug each other tight.
The base of our ultimate canyon rig is the raft itself. We chose the Air 15.6R. At just under 16 feet long, it's large enough for multi-day trips, but still reasonable on smaller rivers. We won't be racing or running big drops, so a traditional shape and full-sized round, that's what the R stands for, tubes will provide a stable and dry ride. When it came to setting up the raft frame, we first considered a boutique-built custom frame, but we wanted something more modular. Being 2,000 miles away from the Colorado green and salmon, we needed the option to break the frame down for travel. We may stern rig this boat with thwarts at the front for the neighborhood kids, and on longer trips we may add another dry box or cooler. The Modular Nrs Frames allow for incredible versatility. You buy the frame in pieces, starting with the outer rails, and then add crossbars to hang gear. Air provides blueprints of their rafts, called a wire diagram, with dimensions that determine length and width of the frame and the raft's interior width to size dry box and cooler. Generally, in all cases, it is best to go as big as the raft will allow.
So when we lay this out, we're going to go 4 locks in the middle.
Yeah.
The box with the pad, and that's the seat.
Okay.
And then we'll space out whether the best with a cooler behind it or whether the cooler's in front of it.
Okay.
All right, so these will be floating depending on where the box goes.
Okay.
So we will wait for the box, drop the box before we cinch those down.
The secret to this stuff is spreading it thick enough that you get coverage, but not so thick that it's sort of layered on top of itself. It needs to dry out to a tacky haze, I guess. Some people reheat it with a hairdryer. I don't do that. I just dry it so it's tacky to touch, and then slam it down on the other side, which is kind of the same.
Opening on this side so it stands up. So when you're rowing here, you can stand up and get in the box. This will all get loaded with gear, right? So you have easy access to it. So now we just need to find you. You need to jump in, okay, because we need to put the seat at the right position to the oars.
The whole thing's
right?
sliding.
So the whole thing moves depending on where your arm length is. Option 1, the drop bar goes off here, right? And then that goes, and then that's literally that's you're pushing it. Option 2 is that we open this up and put the cooler here, and you're pushing on the cooler, which is totally fine too, right? So what that opens this hole up for gear or people. As it is now, we're going to have cooler space, which is wasted space.
Right.
And if we're running light, that's fine. But if you're really loading up and you're going to have cooler and bags, you're going to want that used. So the cooler's floating. The box itself has arms to rest on the frame. The cooler doesn't have that. Coolers aren't built that way. It'd be cool if they did. So instead, rather than put it right on the floor of the raft, which could happen, but now you've got weight on the floor, and you want to keep your floor as light as possible. The floor is going to move, and if you're hitting rocks, you want to have some ability for that floor to give. So you pick it up a little bit so it's suspended on the frame. The frame's now taking the load, and then that's of course the tubes around the outside are taking the load. So of everything on the raft, you want to protect your floor the most. We can distribute the weight of a cooler, which is really heavy when it's loaded. That's put over the frame. The frame's put over the tubes of the raft, so distributing it. That's why we're going to pick it up a little bit. We want to keep it as close to the floor as we reasonably can, thinking like 2 inches off, which gives the floor some room to move, but it also keeps the weight down. So trying to keep the weight down, keep the weight distributed as a principle for putting the whole frame in here.
So just like the coolers in the box, we want to keep the gear off the floor as well. So I've got just a floor that we're installing here, zipping it up to the D-rings, keeping it a couple inches off the floor. Okay, we goofed. The oar leashes, handy dandy oar leashes, we're supposed to put on the frame before we put all the cross pieces on, and we're not going to do this today. We're putting in the custom foot bar, and we're not exactly sure how it's going to be sized, so we're doing the best we can now and figure we'll have to adjust it once we get it on the water. The side rail racks allow you to lash gear and walk up and down the length of your raft. When I first ordered them, I ordered 6-footers, and they advised me at NRS to split that and buy 2 3-foot ones, which allows you to bring 3 feet ahead of your oar locks and then 3 feet back behind, so it gives you more usable space.
Using wide straps for the frame, this would be dedicated really just to keeping the frame on the raft. So wider, because these are carrying a lot of load, so they're stronger, but they also distribute the weight over the tube. A narrower webbing would bind a little bit more and conceivably wear a little bit more, so one thought is to go with a bigger strap, bigger buckle, stronger, but it'll also distribute some weight. So part 2, so we're pulling the frame. These corners we want to get pulled out, so everything's going to be going in opposite directions. So we're pulling the frame out on the raft, and then we're also going to be pulling the frame down on the raft. So each of these corners has a long strap going out to a D-ring, as well as straps going straight down. So whenever you're rowing, the frame has to be absolutely bulletproof, bomber solid, because whatever you pull on the oars, it doesn't go through the raft without going through the frame and going through the straps. So these little straps play a big role in making this boat go somewhere. Without them, there's no power and your boat's not going to move. Pull these up, these frame straps. Put the buckle up, so whenever you're floating down the river, you can, from the seat of the raft, reach back and adjust these by just pulling them up. If you're to put them down, you need to be outside the raft to tighten them. So this is really set up for during the day. You can maintain as these things stretch. They get wet, they stretch. You might want to tighten your frame during the day. So that buckle's pointing up. Part 2 then is come around the frame and do a clove hitch, or at least a double wrap, just so that this doesn't slide. So keep it all nice and smooth and bring it back. So now, once this is tightened, there's no give, that won't move anywhere, and we'll give them a haul all at the same time, then this thing will be locked down. Subtract the distance between the oar grips when rowing from measurement A, divide measurement B in half, mark the oar shafts that distance from the end of the grips, slide the slopper sleeves past mark C so the mark is lined up with the stopper end, clamp tightly.
Insert.
I don't think so. Let's just put them on and see where they fit.
Insert. Mounting the oars, or your spare oars, we're using 2-footers, but you could use a 1-footer. The front is set so that you can just slide the blade out, and the back one you set so that the buckle is facing you, so that when you need it, you just reach down, press that button, and slide the oar out like so and into the oar lock.
So the guide unnamed, or the boatman unnamed, didn't close his cooler. So this is like they wanted to put in. Just going down to the first camp, second camp's like 5 rapids to go. Didn't bother strapping down his cooler. Put everything in and kind of put everything down except for doing the lid on the cooler. And third rapid, went into a little hole sideways and bucked him and kind of dump truck, and the whole cooler dumped what was almost 3 weeks worth of frozen meat into the river. So there was like pot roast and roast beef and like frozen salmon like bobbing down the river, and then it's like hits the eddy lines and swirls and goes down. Smith. But anyways, bottom line is always just strap down your legs.
Kung, kung.